You see the truth behind the lies. You long to break free. Welcome, my digital friend. You have come to the collective channel to free your mind. Are you ready to exit the matrix?
Yeah.
Do you have worms? You very well may. In this episode, we talk about parasites invading us and even controlling our minds. With our special guest, Kim, the Worm Queen, with hosts Joe and Christy from Our Twisted Universe and Bob from Exit the Matrix.
Hi, and welcome to Our Twisted Universe. Today we're going to be speaking with Kim, the Worm Queen, and Bob from Exit the Matrix. Hi, and welcome, everybody.
Good to see you guys.
Hi. We're super excited to have you. We saw your TikTok show, and you have some really interesting little snippets that are slightly disturbing, and I found fascinating. I think worms is a hard topic to cover with some people. What do you think?
I think it's extremely hard. And I think that our country especially is in denial. They don't want to think that there's any way we could have worms. In a physical sense and even kind of the spiritual world, that's kind of what kind of started this whole thing that 10 million people have now viewed one of my videos, which is pretty crazy to think. And I feel like people just don't realize how easy it is to get parasites and worms. So it's definitely a topic that people don't want to present themselves with, and that, you know, there's a large majority of us that have them. So
I feel like there's like shame surrounding it, or something like, oh, you're dirty because you might have a worm. But Joe and I just went to the Dominican Republic and had a little bit of tummy trouble.
Mhm.
And
We brought some friends back with us.
we think we might have picked up a amoeba or two. So yeah, so we were just we kind of thought it was funny, and we just were like, hey, let's go get a cleanse. But I don't think we got a good cleanse. That's I found your cleanse that I'm really interested in. Maybe we can cover that in a little bit later. The difference between your product and some of the other stuff that's out there. I'm just really curious, how did you get started in all this?
So we decided to kind of go break the matrix, and we moved to a recreational piece of property of ours to build a log home. And in the process, I continually kept getting sicker and sicker, and we couldn't figure out why, because I had moved to the property to actually self-heal. And I thought, okay, I've done everything I could do. I got off of big pharma meds. I took mushrooms. I was doing all the right things. I had a Kundalini awakening.
Oh,
And then
wow.
all of a sudden, bam, one day I just figured out the movement that I was feeling was not normal. And why was I still getting sicker? And so I decided to do just a deworm and see. And within 3 days, I knew right away that worms were a lot of my health issues, if not all of my health issues. And then I did a TikTok and I went viral. And in the process of doing that, I continually kept cleansing and I wasn't getting better. So I had our water tested, and I found out that there was roundworm in our water system that our area actually provides for us. So we're not on a well, we're on a community well. And so after that point, I just said, no holds bar. I want everyone to know exactly what could be going on with their bodies. I worked in the medical field for over 18 years. I hold 2 different healthcare degrees, and I had no idea. I was very medical matrix. I had no idea that this could even be something. I was so shocked, and it was shocking to say the least, that like this could be such a big thing for all of us.
How many people do you think are walking around infected with a parasite?
I mean, statistically, between 85 and 95%, because there's over half of the world, billions of people have parasites. And it's not just parasites, it's physical worms as well. So there are two different things. Like you had amoeba, those are parasites. I had Cryptosporidium parvium, which is what kills puppies. It's parvo. My husband had D. fragilis and giardia. And then he also had roundworm, which is physical. So there's two different types. And then there's pinworms, which a lot of us had pinworms. And that's where a shame comes in, because it's like, oh my gosh, you had pinworms. Okay, but if your kid eats dirt, they're probably going to have pinworms. And that's, you know, then it kind of goes from there. But we had roundworm in our water. That is what started the whole thing. Was now, obviously, we have filtration systems all over our property. You touch our water, it is like filtered 6 times before you even consider drinking it. It's then filtered 14 times because I don't want to chance it. But
how would you filter out like the water? I mean, how do you go about that?
So there different types of filtration systems, and they have to be 1 micron filter size or smaller. And then it goes up through a UV light. So anything that could possibly get through 1 micron or smaller, then would get killed through a light. And then this is the whole like process of how we figured out that we should create our own cleanse as well. Because I already was like, I'm a lifer for cleansing. So I started researching and I used my medical skills. And then that's when I started to figure out like what we needed to do to cleanse our bodies as like a whole humanity.
Okay, I have a couple more questions. What
Absolutely.
are some of the symptoms? I have so many questions.
Go ahead.
What are some of the symptoms? Like,
talk.
how would you know you had worms? Like, would you feel a sick stomach or itchy bottom? Or I mean, what happened? What are the symptoms?
So itchy butt's a huge symptom, especially over the full moon, because when you have itchy butt, they come out, the pinworms and some roundworms and some tapeworms, but they come out and they'll lay their eggs. And so that's kind of where it's itchy. And then, you know, not being able to lose weight, that was probably my biggest thing. I had really bad skin and really bad acne as well, and that's gone. Grinding the teeth. Anemia is a huge one because they take 10% of our nutrients, or they take 90% of our nutrients and leave us with 10. So our bodies can never function properly. Chronic fatigue, brain fog. And the thing is, I was doing like lion's mane mushrooms in order for the brain fog, and it still wasn't like at that optimal point. So I started to realize that, you know, the brain fog is real bad because your body's not able to function at a homeostasis level. So they take away from that, and they're in our blood, in our tissue. So obviously when you're going through and it, you know, they're in our blood, it's pumping through here. So then if you have pinworms, which is thread worms, you have a harder time breathing because they're taking up the space up in here. Movement is really bad, especially in the nether regions, not just itchy bum, but yeah.
I'm speechless.
Bob, you're speechless too, Bob.
Okay, I'm going down to your list of symptoms. Are like check. Oh crap, check.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh good, not check.
So why do you think the medical profession just kind of like glazes over that whole thing?
I think in my own professional experience, when you don't have the knowledge about something, 1, you don't want to talk about it. 2, there's no practice. 3, they have a scope of practice that they have to follow. And if they don't, and they go out of that scope, they're afraid to get sued. That's part of my opinion on it. Obviously, the other one, a lot of people think it's to keep us, you know, sick, but that goes in such a big realm of things too, right? Because when I know about something, I'm like shouting it from the rooftops, but I'm kind of, obviously, because I have, you know, so many followers on TikTok, I am shouting it.
They're hearing
but
you.
Yeah, a lot of people are hearing me around the world. I just think that their egos get in the way. I think that people don't want to come down to think about the fact that this little like 30-day starting of a cleanse and then kind of seeing where you go from there is going to be helpful. I don't think that they really look at herbs that way either. I know I didn't. It is very expensive in our country for anti-parasitic medications. When we found out everything that was going on in our bodies with my husband and me, we went to go get his prescription for 6 pills, and it was $999 for 6
Wow.
pills, and his insurance would not cover it. So again, that started the whole perpetual, like, how can we afford to cleanse ourselves continuously? And so that's where our business came in. And we created Parify. But when I look back at it, we still had to do herbal cleanses even after we took the medications that our doctors prescribed for the parasites and worms. So it's not a one and done either, because we cleansed for months and months and months. And I just don't think that they know. I just really, that's with my heart of hearts, I want to believe that they just don't. And that's the medical matrix, you know?
But I mean, Joe and I did a little research, and it looked like other countries regularly deworm their, it's like a regular habit for people.
Ooh, twice a year at least. Some
Yeah,
countries
like-
were, what was that?
I said in the DR where we went, it was just for the amoeba, they had like a half a dozen or so different remedies, and they would cleanse, like you said, every 6 months, they would do a cleanse just as a matter of practice.
Yep, that's right. They do. And we don't.
Yeah.
It's so strange. Western medicine does not believe that this is something that's wrong. And it's a huge problem, so much so I see it all day, every day. It's all I do now, and it's a lot. The worms are a lot. Like when I formulated Parify, I had seen at least 3 out of 5 people had tapeworms. And so hawthorn berry, they don't like hawthorn berry. So we actually put that as a special side in with our Parify tincture, because I saw so many tapeworms. Like it's an epidemic of tapeworms out there, because they're easy to catch and they're hard to get rid of. So
how do you catch a tapeworm?
Sushi, raw meat, your dogs, your cats. Our pets are a huge one. You deworm your pet. Why aren't we deworming ourselves? We deworm them. They have worms. They lick us. We touch their poo. If you don't get your hands completely clean, you just transferred it. So it's really not like a whole like overwhelming process. In our minds it is, because we're not used to it as this public is, But other countries think we're crazy because we don't. It's so crazy to think, because I see it all day on my account. Like, I can't believe you guys are, making such a big deal about it. And I'm like, I mean, it is a big deal because our country just has put their head in the sand. Yeah. I mean, I've even lost my account over all of this multiple times on both Insta and TikTok. I fight on a continuous basis because I'm reported all the time for giving misinformation, as if I created the worms. I didn't create these. I'm just telling people at this point that this is a huge problem we have going on in our country.
I wonder why they want to keep it quiet, because, maybe your tummy's upset, so you're taking more antacids, or
It serves a business purpose.
that is so bizarre. Then, there's a taboo. I was telling my friends I was going to do an interview, and I was describing, a little bit about the worms and everything, and they were screaming. I had everybody thoroughly creeped out, and I was enjoying that immensely. But the people that I've talked to had no clue. Even one of them happened to travel to another country and came back with a worm, and and that was quite shocking, and it kind of got me thinking about it. This is my last year. I've been like looking into it, and then we read a book, This Is Your Brain on Parasites, and we found out about a worm that there's several different worms that can affect bugs, and they can make the bugs do different things. I don't know if you're probably well versed in all that.
Oh yeah.
Like they can make like an ant crawl up to the top so a bird gets it, and because it wants to get into the bird's stomach, or so. It's this whole like,
It's like straight out of a sci-fi.
yeah, it's so bizarre.
Creatures.
Like the worm's end goal is to be in a different creature, but it goes through all these other creatures to get to the end goal. And the one that really stuck out to us the most was the toxoplasma. People can pick up certain personality traits from this worm. I mean, a lot of people haven't heard that. And like you said earlier, what I looked up was 80% of the population has toxoplasma.
Yeah. So toxoplasmosis is what they tell people to be careful when you're scooping your cat litter box when you're pregnant. And then your mindset is you can only get it when you're pregnant. And in reality, that is not the truth. You can pick up toxoplasmosis anytime in your life through cat litter and their poop. And then also potentially their paws when they're coming through. Now, this is not to get rid of your cat or your animals of any kind. You just cleanse. You just make sure that you continuously cleanse because it is an issue. And we've all been led to believe you're never supposed to, scoop the cat litter when you are pregnant, right? That's what us women are told, and the men are told that that's because of toxo. And in addition, horsehair worms control your mind, toxoplasmosis controls your mind, threadworms control your mind. And when you feel unworthy of yourself, it's because you have small intestine inflammation going on due to crypto, giardia, roundworm. So they control what you're doing and how you're thinking. And when you start to rid your body of them, you actually become a totally different person. And it's hard to break away from that. I went through it very intensely, and I did it publicly because I was on TikTok as I was cleansing. So it's all of them. They all hold that trauma in your body. But toxo is scary because you can treat the symptoms. It's a really intense course of herbs and medication mix. So
I guess it makes people less cautious. They kind of like sort of caution to the wind. It can make women choose different men over like they would go for a non-infected man versus an infected man, probably because the worm wants to get more infected, I guess. What else? Oh, men could be more suspicious, jealous, dogmatic, and then the women, I guess they're more warm-hearted and outgoing and moral. I was just thinking that is so strange because a lot of, women, that's more of a feminine, warm-hearted, like grandma, you think like a feminine thing. What happens if we get rid of it? What happens to our personalities? That is so interesting.
Become another person.
I feel like when I started getting rid of all of my parasites and my worms, that I became more comfortable with myself and kind of more intuitive and understanding of like why we're all here and what the reasoning is behind each one of us as a collective and each one of us as an individual. So I feel like you kind of get a better sense of universe, in my opinion, when you start to deworm. And we don't really talk that much about the spirituality of deworming. It's just not like a topic that ever is really discussed, at least on my TikTok account. We talk, we got to get people in there and deworm them. But it really is a big, like, you start to understand the whole reasoning why we're each here and what we play, what part we're playing in this world. It's kind of a cool thing.
So it kind of holds you away from spirit.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. It makes, I think one day I was watching another podcast about parasites, and someone said, if you have that unworthy feeling about yourself, you really should do a cleanse. And that is when I realized, not only when I'm like, it's time for me to cleanse, but also it's just time for me to take some of these herbs and make myself feel a little bit better. And I feel like that's kind of a big thing that our society especially has an issue with, is feeling worthy. So yeah.
I definitely think there's a lot of programming involved in that. I'm wondering, the worms, like making you feel insecure and unhappy, drive you to crave sugar. Is that true?
Yep. Crave sugar, be sad, not be active, not want to take care of yourself. Why? Because when you start to realize these things, that they're going to die, you're going to find a way to kill them. So they don't want you to be happy. They don't want you to be feeling good about yourself. They don't want you to feel like you're included in things, because then you're going to want to kill them and they don't want to die.
I know you probably don't know. How is a worm in my stomach going to affect my brain and make me sad? How does that work?
They're not just in your stomach though. They're in our blood. They're in our tissue. They're in our bowels. They're in our muscle. They're everywhere. So they don't want to die because we're a really comfortable host for them. And, you know, when you take like blood work, when you do blood work, they can show up in your blood work. That shows they're in your blood. So when they're exiting and they're ready to leave their eggs behind to have their families, and their families can live on, they go out through your bowels and they don't just live in your intestines. That is like, that's a misconception that a lot of people have.
Oh.
So, and when you pee them out, this is kind of crazy sounding, but your pee is a runoff of your blood. So anything that comes out of your pee was originally in your blood, and it all sheds from your tissue. So you eat, and then they get in and they start to like wreak havoc on your body as they're going down, because you know you're eating and they go down like this, or they go up through your pores, because that's a hookworm, and you get those from walking barefoot, going in lakes. So those type of things happen, and they get in your bloodstream and they suck your blood. That's what a hookworm is. But I figured, like for me personally, I figured out 100% that I was in a severe parasitic infection in October of last year, when I went and got my blood work done, and I had a level that's called an eosinophil and EOS, and it was so high. And there's only two things, parasite and mold. And I had both. Most of the time, people that have really bad infections have some sort of a mold element that is growing too.
That's interesting. I'll have to look again, but I think on my blood work, when I have it done, that's usually elevated, like really high. And the doctor says, oh, that's not important.
Right. They do.
Like,
they say
next time I'm going to say, dude, I've got worms. We got to fix this.
So the reason that, you go take Parafy, that's how you fix it at this point, because we have cleansed thousands of people around the world, and it is crazy to watch the changes in people. But the reason why your eosinophil is high is because your white blood cell is attacking another cell that can't keep up. So that makes that elevated, that specific blood test. And another thing that our country doesn't really think about is the water, like our wells, should have that filtration system too. So it's not just, walking outside and going in the lake. It's also our food and how you're soaking your vegetables. Are you soaking them with clean filtered water, or are you just washing the worm water onto what you already have in your produce? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just us re-educating ourselves. It's such indoctrination that we've had in the matrix that it's kind of relearning everything. Bob, you're just shaking your head.
It makes me think a lot about, the whole saying, as above, so below. I mean, our bodies are like universes to other, creatures, bacteria, parasites. And it's just mind blowing when you're explaining all this, because I'm just picturing like our whole body is like an ecosystem, and just kind of like the earth, when humans are doing stuff to destroy the earth, it's almost like our bodies, with these creatures and worms and parasites and bacteria. And it's and interesting thing is that some of those are, good for us, some of the bacteria and stuff.
Yep.
I guess I would ask you, are there any natural bacteria or microscopic organisms that actually fight these things off on our behalf?
There is some good bacteria in your flora. So, that's one big thing. And the reason why you got to have that is as you're healing the lining of your stomach, that's when it's pushing out the parasites and worms. So it's like an onion, it's going to flow, and you're going to, like, I had crypto, and then I ended up with an amoeba, and then I ended up with giardia, because it was just pushing all of those out as I'm healing my gut. And then it has the smooth lining with good flora. So that's when you take a probiotic or a pre-probiotic, that's when those things start to mend that thing. We are not meant to have parasites in our body. The Egyptians tried to warn us to say, this is what you got to fight against. They actually, in what I've read, they had cats, and then they knew when they needed to cleanse more because they had the cats around. But no, there really isn't a good heavy metal or a good mold or a good parasite that we should have in our bodies. And we're going to fight these things off until the day we die, and then they're going to win because the worms come in and take over, right, when you're dead. So
Wow.
and the thing is it's not like it's not difficult cleansing either. It's herbs. It's like wormwood. It's black walnut hull, clove, Oregon grapefruit's my favorite anti-parasitic ever. And we just soak those. Like, we literally took some ways that the ancestors used to do cleanses, anti-parasitics whenever they needed to, and they would do them once a month. They would chew on things that were anti-parasitic for this purpose,
I wonder how we got
know,
rid
the-
of all the practices.
What were you going to say, Bob? And then I can
Oh, I was
answer.
just gonna say, I don't know if you've ever read the Nag Hammadi scriptures before.
Mm-mm.
So it's the Gnostic scriptures. Anyways, in the Nag Hammadi, they talk about the God of this world, which they say is the false God. It's not the true creator of all. They call him Yaldabaoth. Well, he's described as a big worm. There's often depictions of him. He's like a big worm or a snake with a lion's head. And kind of makes me wonder if, on a microcosm level, if this was something that they were trying to warn about or explain, because the Nag Hammadi was written by the Essenes, who were kind of like the early, they were the Jewish mystics, in fact, a lot of the followers of Christ, a lot of the apostles, they were Essenes. John the Baptist was an Essene. And so it's kind of interesting that they talked about this big worm, how it controlled this world and stuff, like unseen. So I don't know if there's any connection there, but just made me think a lot about that.
Would you send that to me when you get a chance? Would you
Oh,
guys?
yeah.
Okay, that would be great. I would love to read that. I would love to see it. I mean, I feel like there's a connection, definitely. I know since I've dewormed that I have a little more ability to see things in the future than I used to be able to. That telepathy came more predominant for me since deworming. I have more. It's not even like an intuition. It's like, okay, this is going to happen. I just don't know exactly what day. And then when it does, and usually I'll say something out loud to like my bestie Erica or my husband. I'll say, okay, this is what I just saw or felt. And then when it happens, I'm like, remember when I told you? And they're like, oh my gosh. Like, I feel like that definitely has strength. And I've always had like a little gift like that, but now it's almost, we say wild a lot in like Roger's Hood Apothecary. We say wild all the time. We're like, this is crazy because it is like, it's crazy. So I wouldn't doubt, as a lot of other countries are aware of these things and they have like that different mindset than us, if that, if they see those type of things like you're talking about from those scriptures.
Kind of makes me wonder if worms are holding a low vibration.
Yes, they do. I actually do frequencies consistently throughout my day. So a worm has multiple different frequencies that bring down your vibration so that you're not vibrating. And when you have, so I do frequencies like with chi coil and Healy, and I also do sound frequency. So you can actually listen to my channel has tons of frequencies. So you can actually listen to a specific frequency and it'll make you not feel really good. You'll have a reaction to it because it's actually mirroring their frequency and they don't like it. You know how like an opera singer sings and it breaks the glass?
Yeah.
That's because they're singing at that energy frequency of the glass. So it breaks. So you do the same thing with mold or parasites, or I mean, there's tens of thousands of frequencies, but especially the parasitic frequencies, they'll actually start to migrate out of your body because you're making your body inhospitable to them and they don't like it. So
That is so
Interesting.
funny.
Have you ever heard of a Rife
yes,
frequencies, Rife
yes. So
machine?
yes. So I am really good friends with David Wong. He made cheek oil. He has the Rife app. He invented the Rife app and he has his own frequency devices. And so they're pretty cool because they take that frequency and they you can put it on your body and it penetrates through your skin. So I used to partner with Rife machines, but I like cheek oil way better. I like Healy. So, but cheek oil, you can pick your frequency and it's pretty cool because I don't have them in front of me because I'm in a rental, but they're cool. They're like little circles and then you just stick them on and they penetrate through your skin. And then I use them to help detox me out of mold because we just got out of mold poisoning a couple of months ago. So, but yes, they're cool for parasites too.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting because remember how they like shut his technology
Yeah.
down, the US government, and of course the Rife machines, he was able to like treat cancer, he was able
Mm-hmm.
to treat all these ailments. Makes you wonder if, if those at a high level, those certain frequencies could just, flush those things or kill them outright in your body. And maybe, there's more to why they allow these things to overtake us. When you
Mm-hmm.
think about the fluoride in our water and the poison in our foods and all these things, it's like they're constantly trying to dumb us down, lower our spiritual level, our own frequency. And I wouldn't doubt it if they know these things are there. And I wouldn't even doubt it if the food and things that we consume actually help elevate the levels of these things.
They do 110% they do. And it's funny because you take the herbs. So we have a kit. I'll just tell you about my kit real quick. And then maybe it'll give you a really good understanding of how you can combat this stuff. So we have a kit and I did the kit because it's so exhausting going through each thing you got to cleanse. So I just wanted to hand people in the world a box and say, here's instructions, here's 3 tinctures and the binder, and here's why you're going to do it because I can't be everywhere. So I just decided to do this instead. We have the 3 tinctures. One's called Parafy, which is cool because it's trademarked too, because we invented the word. And so it has wormwood, black walnut hull, garlic, hawthorn berry, and then we use some raw honey because that is a candida killer, which candida is a huge issue. It's an overgrowth of yeast, and a lot of people have candida, and there's no way to just like naturally get rid of it. So I did research, and it's raw honey, unpasteurized, just so you guys know. Manuka honey too is really great. And so that's one tincture. And then the next tincture is called Sustain. And Sustain has 3 herbs. One is Oregon grapefruit, my favorite. The second is Usnea, and I forage Usnea. It is called Old Man's Beard, and it was used by Native Americans to help balance your autoimmune systems. It also was used as natural antibiotic. So as you are cleansing, they're releasing not just spiritual toxins, but they're releasing actual toxins into your bloodstream. So we're trying to like cause you to be able to continue the cleanse and feel better so that you understand your body. It'll adjust anything that's under the immune system or above and having issues. And then peppermint, which helps kind of get rid of some digestive worms, but it also helps calm it. So those are my 2 faves. And then my favorite is Metal Flush. And again, I go into the rainforest in my area and I forage another herb called lungwort. And lungwort helps with mucus. It also helps with any viruses that are in your respiratory system that we've all had issues with lately. And so when you're dumping these worms, they're dumping mucus. And so you got to kind of sop that up. And so that one has dandelion root in it, which helps your liver function. It has burdock root, which is a liver function. Your liver is so taxed because it's like the last defense before you start to go through all of your body and have all of this toxin going through it. So you got to like support that the best you can. And cilantro. I don't think a lot of people know how great cilantro is. Cilantro is your heavy metal detoxer. You could eat cilantro all day long and you're going to pee and poop out heavy metals. So, excuse me. So when you get all of these put together, these herbs will actually help you process all of the stuff that's going on. And then there's one more thing that a lot of people don't know when they're doing any detox. It's called a binder. And you got to bind all of this stuff together that's being released into your body: parasites, worms, heavy metals, mucus. And so my favorite is Ceylon cinnamon and coconut activated charcoal. And when you put those two, all of those things together, you're going to successfully get rid of things in your body that don't belong. So that's where I got the kit. And that's why I started this kit, because I was like put out there last year in July on my own. And I'm like, well, what is all of this stuff? Like, why am I doing this? Well, when you go to release heavy metals out of your system, which you guys are everywhere, right? Heavy metals are in everything we do. They're going to then, so the worms and the parasites hold on to those heavy metals, that they love them, that weights them down, and they make you feel tired. And so when you release those heavy metals, you're releasing the worms, but it's not a worm cleanse. It's just releasing the heavy metals. And then they're free to either roam about your body, or they're going to come out eyes, ears, nose, mouth, areas of your body like I had, come out everywhere. And so you got to kind of do all of these in a sequence like what we did in our kit. But they love heavy metals. They love they love being weighted down because they're lazy and they want to just control it.
Bob is freaking out.
Bob, can you tell? I get this. Your face is how everyone around me. This is a typical way that people respond to me, because they're like, oh my God. Like, oh my God. So all of you that are watching this, honest to God, this is very normal to feel like shocked at first, and to also to be like, oh my God, how is this possible? How is it that like, I'm 44 years old. How did I never know this? I wrote anatomy books. I ran 25 medical colleges. How did I not know this? Like, how?
I'm both shocked and I'm fascinated by it. It's can't tear myself away kind of thing.
I'm so excited to hear all this, because I feel like, if people want to jump on board, I mean, it's the path to wellness. And I think a lot of us have been suffering for a really long time.
Myself included. I literally, without going into a whole lot, because I'll cry and I don't want to cry, I literally went to our property so that either I was going to live and get off of my big pharma, or I was not going to live. And there were moments. I had a mini stroke last year in January of 2021. And then I had a Kundalini and I thought I was going crazy. There are moments that I was like, how could we all be this sick? How could we all get ourselves to this point that we're this sick? And if you watch me from that point before I went viral, you'll see how sick I really was. I was very sick. And it just, obviously I'm chipping away at my health continuously, but like, I was the typical American who I fully, wholeheartedly believed in the medical matrix. Like, I worked for them. I worked in them. I'm licensed, like I'm not anymore, like I am the typical person. So it is shocking, yet it's pretty amazing too, that we are kind of all breaking and exiting the matrix like we are, because It's something, and that really was a big push for me to cleanse too, and to see something, because I watched a couple of gurus, and they were like, in order for you to fully get to that next level and to fully understand yourself, you have to cleanse. And I'm like, what do they mean by cleansing? You have to cleanse, like, because we have so much garbage stuck in our body.
Would you say
Interesting.
fasting is a good thing to do with the
Yes.
cleanse? Yeah.
I do. Juicing, fasting, intermittent fasting. I do have a website, because there's so much information. And again, how Bob is like kind of like, oh my gosh. And Joe's like, oh my gosh. I have a whole nother website community where it has everything I've researched and done. You can just literally do like a monthly subscription. And it takes, I think someone said it's taken them like a month so far to even get through maybe 10 of my 25 things. So there's a food book, like it shows you what to eat. Stick with alkaline foods, because they like acidy foods. So anything that's alkaline, they're not gonna stay in your system as long. It's all the way down to like good, because you're starving yourself a little bit and you're starving them. And so you've got that. And then juicing is huge, and to really not have a lot of die-offs. If you eat kind of similar to what you should through the food guide on my website and our community, you actually can have die-offs be less, because they're starving, they don't have any energy. And a lot of people that are cleansing, the first few days is the hardest, because they're on alert and they don't want to die. So they're like, go eat ice cream, go eat meat, go eat sugar, you're giving us strength. And then as you do drop them out and they die, then they're leaving their young. So they're dropping eggs, and then they're super sugary people, like super sugary parasites. So as they're dying off, they're leaving all of that behind. So yeah, then you're just giving them more and more strength. And a tapeworm can lay 1 million eggs a day. So keep that in mind. Yes, Bob.
That's interesting. When you think about it, it seems like anymore, almost like 80% of our food, at least processed food, has, corn syrup in it or some kind of a sugar.
Yep.
It's almost like they design our food in a way that it keeps these parasites strong, so that it saps us of that vitality, that critical thinking and spirituality.
Mm-hmm. It does. It totally does. Everything in our country's food is like kind of contaminated in a sense, and it keeps you down. And the longer you stay down, the more you're a slave to the way that they want us to constantly operate as humans in this matrix of realm of theirs.
One other question about, possible things that can maybe help with this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if if you've been around or had Reiki done or been, know anybody is a Reiki practitioner, but kind of wondering if, if energy healing or anything like that has any effect on helping cleanse your body of these things.
It does. I did some Reiki on it, and I'm not a Reiki. I just had someone do it for me. And I feel like as I have released the parasites, it released the trauma, and my PTSD that I had, severe PTSD, kind of went through the roof a little bit while I was cleansing and going through everything. And then I kind of got more centered when I did some Reiki. So, and crystals, and really just keeping myself focused and making sure I meditate and kind of ground myself. But all of those things, because they are holding on to our trauma. That's why you hold on to the trauma, and they don't want you to heal. So they hold on to it.
That's crazy. I actually am a Reiki master, and just a fun fact, there are energetic parasites too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people know about them. When I've done energy work on people, I've pulled things off of them, and there's been some weird situations, like it gets a little supernatural. And they're like, what was that? Like this black thing poured off of this lady. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. And she was very scared and she wanted to know what it was. And of course, I couldn't tell her because I didn't really know either. I had just started. But if I had to say what it was, energetically, to me, it felt like a parasite, like a bug.
Yeah.
Not like it like a demon or something really super scary, but it was like an energetic bug. And I came like over the years, I realized there are like low vibrational parasitic bug type creatures that attach as well.
Go to Z app, Z and then dash APP, and that frequency, those frequencies are going to show you exactly what you're probably talking about. You'll feel it, and they hold on to it. They legitimately hold on to it. They do. So you did see that. It's not crazy. You're talking to me. I'm the worm queen at this point. Like anything's possible, right?
Yeah,
Definitely.
you know how I mentioned the Nag Hammadi earlier about
Yeah.
the Yaldabaoth, the big worm. Well, they what Christy was talking about, you know, kind of like vampiric, you know, spiritual creatures. You know, they talk a lot about the archons, and they're like these almost like energy vampire type things, you know. And but that's what they do. They feed off of especially negative energy. They prefer negative energy, and so I kind of wonder, you know, it just if it's like at all different levels. It's a spiritual thing. It's a
Mhm.
physical thing. You know, it's just really interesting, this whole conversation.
I love talking about it, and I love what you guys are asking, and the fact that like it is so integrated into what is happening in our society too, you know. And they want to, like you're saying, low vibration. That's what they want. They want to keep us low vibration. Why do they want you to be happy? Like happiness doesn't make money for them. Whoever
Well,
them
happy
are.
people, yeah,
Mhm.
they're not out spending money. They're not buying stuff to fill that hole. They're not stuffing their face with ice cream.
They're not afraid.
They're not
Yeah.
afraid.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, if
That's
you're
true.
happy, what do you care? You know?
Yeah. And it
Well,
is
Don't
it's
harsh my mellow.
such a valid point, because honestly, when I'm not feeling good about myself, I literally just take some wormwood. And if you go to the history of wormwood, right, that was absent, and then that was outlawed, um, because they say it made you crazy, but it didn't. It just gives you enlightenment, you know. And it's just all the way down to like I also do psilocybin, and I learned about Amanita muscaria, which is the toadstool mushroom. I learned what that can do for you in the process of learning about worms and how they about the DNA structure of medications and what they did for the plants versus that. Like I can go outside my house and pick some Oregon grapefruit and chew on that and deworm myself. I mean, obviously I like doing more than just Oregon grapefruit, but how much could they make from that if I'm outside pulling it? And some people say that your DNA cell, the cells in your, when you shed onto the ground, that the earth actually says what you need by it growing up around you. So I have a ton of Oregon grapefruit, and I thought about that, and I went outside. I'm like, well, I wonder if we have worms in our water. I wonder if there's a ton of worms in this area. And so I started researching and researching, and that's when I found out that Cryptosporidium parvium is huge here. And they have signs everywhere that say, don't drink the water. Don't let your dogs drink the water because crypto's here, you know? So anyway, and if you go outside and you have dandelion roots, you know, that's because you've got some heart condition going on, and so you should really take that plant. And so I started kind of digging deeper and deeper and seeing like what else could be happening that they just don't want us to know.
That is a trip. And I believe it.
Mhm.
My mind's a little bit blown. What would you recommend for people with pets?
So I did and I've got it on, I'll try and figure out where it's at. I'll repost it. So I have a whole pet parasite program that I wrote with I did not work with Dr. Clark, but I researched what she did. And then I went in and I just kind of rewrote it and added some other things. But you can actually treat your dogs with parsley water and can help keep them from needing to be constantly dewormed. Because there is some medications like fenbendazole, and as much as it sucks to take a dog dewormer, there is some protocols for fenbendazole because it's all kind of the same thing. When you get into the synthetic antiparasitics, that are all very similar. But with dogs, I would recommend at least 2 to 3 times a year with dogs. And then you can do preventative care with the dogs and cats. And so there's a whole protocol. But Dr. Heide Clark is who really founded a lot of the stuff that I researched through too. But parsley water is huge for dogs. I don't know what it is about that because I don't know enough about veterinarian stuff. But I would recommend deworming your dogs at least 3 to 4 times a year.
Does that work for cats too? Or
Yes.
is there some? Okay.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is once you get on a good path and you're deworming your whole family, it'll just become normal. Like it's just normal for me and my husband, right? Like we had to stay in a rental last month because, well, we're in a rental too right now because we had mold where we were living in our travel trailer while we were building our log home. So the last couple of months we've been out of there while I've been detoxing from mold, which is a whole nother conversation, what mold can do to us. So we were at the mercy of their water, right? Because I'm pretty picky now about my water. It's kind of a trauma for me. And I know there was something going on in their water. So I am now on a deworming cleanse for 7 days. And then usually I'll do 3 days before the full moon and 2 days after the full moon once a month. So you can follow those steps with your dogs, your pets, yourselves.
That's a good idea. Because I'm sorry, it grosses Joe out. I kiss my cats all the time. I'm kissing my dogs too. So I mean, if they got it, I probably
Giving me toxoplasma.
and he kisses me. So I mean, there it goes, the cycle.
Yeah. It's the cycle. And you could be attracted to each other because you have similar worms and they want to stay attracted to each other. So it's
my
crazy.
worm likes your
numbers.
worm. That's awesome. Bob, do you have any more questions?
It's interesting, Kim, how you're talking about the full moon. You know the whole thing about lunatics, people that literally go crazy, or act out of their minds a little bit or a little different than normal when there's a full moon out. Could that be possibly because these worms become more active during that time?
110%. And you want to know why? This is one of the biggest questions why. And working in the medical field, we always geared up for the full moon, right? Because I worked in an ER, I worked in urgent care, and then I worked in endocrine, and oh my gosh, craze. And now I know why. Now in neurology, now I know why. Because your body's serotonin runs way more fluid during the full moon, and they eat the serotonin out of you, making you not happy. But they eat the serotonin, they dislodge themselves 3 days before the full moon to replant themselves amongst your blood, your tissue, and your muscles, and make a whole new family in that area. So they can flow way more smoothly through during a full moon. That's why people are going cray, is because they're hooked one spot, and then all of a sudden the full moon comes and they're like, ooh, it's a party. Let's go create a whole new neighborhood. Let's go. And as they're doing it, they're dropping all of their eggs on the way out, creating all new ones. If you get really bad heartburn, or one thing you can do is you can eat some ice cream over the full moon, and you'll actually end up getting like kind of a heartburn feeling right here. It's because of their eggs.
Ew, ew, ew.
I know.
I need to know this, but I don't need to know this.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power.
These are hard truths.
Cruise.
You just took the big giant red worm pill.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a mad scientist, I like to say, and so I'm anxious to get started experimenting.
Oh,
finding these things.
definitely. Kim, how does
So that's
somebody
why-
get in touch? What was that?
So that's why people are crazy in the full moon.
That is so nuts. That's crazy. You're blowing my mind again. I was going to say for our viewers, I know they're going to want to get in touch with you. How do they find your page and your website?
So I'm under Mrs. Rogers Hood, as in like Mr. Rogers Neighborhood. So Mrs. Rogers Hood, and I'm on TikTok, and then on my Insta, it's Mrs. Rogers.hood. There's a Mrs. Rogers Hood, and she gets all the cray craze too, but I'm Mrs. Rogers.hood. I can't imagine what her DMs look like some days. Anyway, so those are my two handles. I have a website and a company. It's rogershood.com. We have the Parasite kit over there as well. And I have another community on Retrieve, but you can find everything you possibly can think about me on rogershood.com. I have a website specifically because of all of this.
And thank goodness you do.
Yeah.
So I already got my kit is on the way. So I think Joe's going to be ordering one tonight.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining us. And
Yes, this has been fascinating.
got any parting shots, Bob?
No, I'm just trying to absorb all this still, trying to let it sink in, figuratively and actually.
Kim, thank you again. We loved having you
Thank
tonight.
you.
Yeah.
I loved being here. I appreciate you guys.